as we think about reinventing school and education in India. With that, we have Andrea with us, who is a Chief Program Officer at All Means All. And to introduce her, we're bringing in Sandeep. Hi, Sandeep. Sandeep is the founder at The Circle. Over to you.
Thank you for that, Arshia. And thank you, everybody, for being here. It's good to have all of you. Those of you here with us on Zoom, welcome. Those of you here with us live streaming on YouTube, welcome. Those of you on LinkedIn, welcome. So everybody being here, just a big thank you. And Andrea, it is good to see you and it's good to have you here. And so a lot of gratitude to you as well. Folks, we're excited to kick this off. We think it's going to be a pretty incredible hour and a half together. It should be an insightful hour and a half together. I met Andrea for the first time 16 years ago. Wow, yeah, 16 years ago. Yeah, I don't like saying that number, but 16 years ago, when both of us actually first walked into a classroom and had our first day one as teachers. And we both taught in the same school as first year teachers, as day one teachers in the middle of Washington, D.C. And over the course of the next few years, we would basically be holding space in the shared struggle of what it means to be a first year teacher, which I think many people here can relate with us on. We also would basically be holding space on what it means to hold the shared struggle of what it means to work in a school that was struggling with so much. And through that, I think we developed bonds that would last probably a lifetime. And I think what I discovered through that time was a teacher who deeply, deeply cared about kids. What I discovered through that time was a practitioner who you're about to hear from, who would start developing an expertise and a lifelong commitment to inclusivity. And what I discovered through those few years was a friend who would probably remain committed to education and to equity for the rest of her life. And so it is a privilege to have her here. Andrea, it is a deep, deep privilege to have you here. In the years since, folks, she has done many, many things. She spent more than 10 years rooted in the work of collegiate academies in New Orleans, Louisiana, most recently serving as its chief academic officer before eventually moving on to become the chief program officer for All Means All, an organization that she's going to tell us a little bit more about today as well. But with that, I don't think I can add much more to this introduction, but to say that it is a privilege. I think there is so much that we can all learn from, honestly, the 16 years of work that you have been putting in to figure out how to make education work for all kids. So just thank you for being here, Andrea. I know it is early in the morning for you, and then we're going to hand this over to you to get us started.
Thank you so much for that, Sandeep. That was maybe the kindest introduction I've ever received. And I'm just so grateful for you all having me here and so excited to spend time learning alongside you, because I do believe that working towards building inclusive communities for those with disabilities is truly a journey, and it is one that you invest in and do better every day. And so thank you for having me, and thank you for spending your evening with me. I know we are in different time zones. I will probably say morning a few times, so please accept my apology, and thank you for the grace, and I look forward to talking with you today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I might just ask Sandeep if you don't mind giving me a thumbs up if you can see it. Excellent. So here we are. Thank you for having me. I wanted to start just with our title here today, just building inclusive communities. It starts with a choice. Too often, I believe in education communities, in all communities really, it is comfortable to be able to say those kids can get something better somewhere else. And what we might mean by those kids is students with disabilities. And so I wanted to start with this idea of it starts with a choice. And this is something we talked about at collegiate academies. This is something we talk about with leaders at All Means All across the United States. It is a choice to know better and to do better and to continue to strive to build inclusive communities. So I wanted to thank you first and foremost for making that choice and being here today so that we can continue our journey and do this work alongside communities, alongside people with disabilities, and for better outcomes for all people. just a little bit about where I sit in my professional work right now. I am the Chief Program Officer for an organization called All Means All. We're a 15-month principal and network leadership team cohort. So basically anyone who is working as a chief academic officer or within the special education space at a network leading multiple schools, or sitting in the leadership team space, typically school leaders. We work with them for 15 months really to build community cultures that are inspired and excited to build spaces that serve all students, and do that as a point of this is who we are, pride, and understanding that we do this work with our communities, with our students, with our families, and then continue to grow and learn based on their own community and context. And so you can see a little our mission verbatim in that purple circle there, but that is the overall of what we do. And we start with that same choice that I just spoke about today. And so many folks coming to us, we say you make the choice, you build the culture, and then alongside the community, you build the systems that sustain it. And so a little bit more about me. Before I got here, Sandeep did share a lot of this, so I'll go through it somewhat more quickly. I have a master's of special education from American University. I started my career in elementary education and did some student teaching both in Indianapolis in Australia, in the southern part of Australia. And I was lucky enough to get to learn and teach alongside Sandeep in Washington, D.C. before I moved to New Orleans. In New Orleans, I had the opportunity to work with many schools that were just starting, where we could truly build special education programs from the root of the school. So at the point of inception, so that we were building inclusive communities to the best of our abilities. What I noted across that time is how mindset impacts the work that we do. Making the choice for really does make the work accelerate, make the systems live, make the community more inclusive. And notice that once people made the choice, how you then show up with the systems you build, the policies you write, the community you build that then sees that mission and those mindsets through. I've been lucky enough to be on so many design teams as a part of my journey and career. Most recently, while at collegiate academies, I got to work to help design alongside the community, a program that's called Opportunities Academy, which was the first 18 to 21 program that served the entire city of New Orleans, where young adults with disabilities were able to do a person-centered planning process where they define who and what do I want to be true about, I guess, what do I want to be true about my life rather, when I'm 25, and however many years I have in this space, this program, afford me that in the areas of employment. So where I want to work, the job I like versus the job that I maybe just have access to, how I want to live, and what that means in terms of how I independently navigate supports and systems, and then how I leverage resources and access tools within my community, anything from a bank to a grocery store to public transportation, so that I can live maximally independently and do that in a way that I have agency and power over. And so I can get the gift of continuing to work with this community, but in my mind, this is the design experience that so transformed the way that I think about how we design for and more importantly with communities, for ensuring that all students with disabilities and young adults with disabilities have the spaces and places to thrive and build choice-filled lives to the maximum extent possible. The other thing I will name is every time I went on one of these design journeys with the community, I learned that it was our expectations as a society, as a system, as an institution that were often holding back our young adults with disabilities, our students with disabilities, not their abilities. And so any sort of changing of mindset, of changing of anything that needed to be done really did need to start with us as leaders, with us as educators, and with us as people holding the space to ensure that folks were able to thrive and prosper in the way that we know that they can. And so again, wanted to say thank you for being here with me today. We are going to, excuse me, and we're going to take a journey through a series of artifacts together that I hope will inform your choices and your critical moves to increasing inclusive learning communities wherever you sit in your community, wherever you sit in your teams in the larger education community. So my hope and my goal is that you'll leave with concrete ideas or tools that you can use to inform and stay true to this choice that you've made by being here today in your future work. And so first, just want to stamp that I thank you for making the choice and I thank you for being here with me today. As we go through this session, I will send folks into breakout rooms to discuss different videos or artifacts with one another and ask that we use the chat. If you're live streaming, I ask that maybe when we go to those, you have a notebook or a place to write where you're reflecting, journaling, taking notes of how you want to apply this moving forward in whatever work you are doing. Excuse me. So here's sort of the frame of what we'll do. We're going to start with a video breakout of a young woman, doing a TED Talk on the power of being disabled. Then we'll talk about two fundamental ideas that maybe you've heard about and ground them in our work today, the Pygmalion effect and the least dangerous assumption. Then I will show you a video of Able Coffee Roasters, which is in Huntington Beach, California. That is an employer that specifically sought out to build employment opportunities for students with disabilities, or I'm sorry, for young adults with disabilities. One former teacher, so used a lot of what he knew from the classroom to make that happen. And then I will leave you finally with some tools to think about how you continue this design work forward with communities and with people with disabilities to maximize learning opportunities and make them as inclusive as possible. So as we do that, I wanted to start first with this video from a young woman named Asmani. I am not a person who identifies as a person with a disability, so I think it is important as we go in this journey to hear from a person with a disability and learn about their experience. And so as we learn and listen alongside Asmani, I ask that you think about and take note of what's resonating with you, what's sparking new ideas, what's showing you a way to do something better that you hadn't previously thought about. This video is about 7 minutes, I believe. And so go ahead and have a notepad next to you. I welcome you to put those in the chat as we listen. And I'm going to go ahead and get that started right now. Sandeep, you're at the top of my screen. Would you give me a thumbs up if you can hear this? I just want to make sure the sound is working. Thank you.
This summer when I was 11, my family took a trip to Maine. I really don't remember most of this trip except one thing. I remember I really had to pee and we were in a restaurant or a bakery or something, and there was one bathroom and 5 people in line in front of me. So I'm standing in the bathroom line and the woman in front of me had a child who was maybe 5 or 6, and something happened that made that child turn around. Because when they did, their eyes got all big and they looked really scared, like something was wrong. They were looking at me. So I looked down at my body to make sure I wasn't bleeding or anything that would make them concerned. I wasn't. And so I smiled at them, but they continued to stare. And if you're used to staring, you know that it lasts about a minute until the person feels guilty or they make their assumptions about you, and then they move on. So I decided I just wouldn't look at her. And in return, she lets go of her mother's hand and walks around my entire body. She does a 360 to see me from all angles, and then she sits right here and looks up at me. And I'm in line trying not to look at her because that's super awkward, and I feel my face get red, and I'm looking around and no one else is looking at me except this one girl. But it feels like a million eyes are on me. And I know what she's asking herself. She's asking herself, what happened to that girl's arm? So I look down and I tell her. And I guess she's satisfied because she goes back in line, but that's all I remember from Maine. I remember the feeling of being embarrassed. And the big question that she was asking herself, and the question I get most often, is, what happened to your hand? To answer that question, if I told you a shark bit it off, how would you feel? Would you feel sorry for me or guilty? What if I told you I had a disease and I had to amputate my arm? Now, how do you feel? Do you feel scared or do you want to know more? What was the disease? How did it feel? But what if I told you I was born like this? Would that make you feel safer or even more sorry? Here's my question. Why does it matter? When I told the young person in Maine what happened, she left, but that's not usually the case. Usually I get follow-up questions like, why? Or does it hurt? And as harmless as these questions may sound, it's important to remember that it is not a disabled person's job to cater to your curiosity and help you make sense of them. When someone tries to make sense of my body before learning my name or getting to know me, it's dehumanizing. A lot of times when people see me, they see one of two things. They see someone to pity or someone who's inspiring. My whole life, people have asked me if I need help with small things, cutting food, carrying bags, drawing. And it seems like when people try to help, they're coming from a really good place, but they're acting off of their own ideas of what I need, rather than asking me what would be helpful. And there is such a big difference between asking how you can support someone and assuming what they need. I've always perceived this as pity. Others don't think I can do it myself, and that's why they ask. And in return, it has made it extremely hard for me to ask for help when I do need it. The truth is, I can do anything y'all can do. Being an amputee doesn't make me any less capable than a person with 4 limbs. The difference is that the world was designed for non-disabled people. So it may take me more time to learn, and I might need help. And that's because we don't have all of the accommodations and understanding we need yet. When it's not pity someone feels when they look at me, it's probably inspiration. I've been told that I'm inspiring a countless amount of times by strangers who are amazed that I live my life and don't let disability stop me. I've been living my life with one arm for a while now, and there's nothing inspiring about me living my day-to-day life. But this cycle of constantly trying to be more than someone you need to pity, but less than an inspiration traps me. And maybe as you're looking at me right now, you aren't feeling either of those things. But next time you see someone with a disability, recognize what you're feeling. Most likely you know someone with a disability, even if you aren't aware of it yet. But it shouldn't take knowing someone personally to learn more about this topic. A lot of our internalized thoughts about people come from society and what we're taught. And although we were taught this unconsciously, it's up to each one of us to intentionally unlearn it. There are some other things y'all need to do to be good allies to disabled people, like following the leadership of a disabled person and treating other people the way they want to be treated, rather than the way that you want to be treated. After knowing me for a while, a lot of people will say that it's not a big deal. And I agree. The truth for me is that being disabled is an honor and something that I'm proud of. It's a part of how I see the world and how the world views me, but this feeling of pride when it comes to my identity and appearance hasn't come easily, as growing into something the world has taught you to be ashamed of often isn't easy. There are so many times where I thought, if I had 2 hands, this wouldn't be happening. All the years in middle school where my parents sent out letters to every single family in hopes that if they explained my body, I wouldn't have to. Or that time in camp where girls surrounded me in the bathroom, arms in their shirts laughing. Or all the times where I was forced to explain to a classroom that it's not okay to touch me or anyone. When I was younger, I did not use the word disabled. Instead, I insisted that I was simply different. Disability in my mind was something to be ashamed of, something that made me weak. And I live with this every single day. That being said, I'm very privileged. I've had adults in my life who are ready to support me since before I was born. I've had amputees to look up to and the ability and opportunity to go to amputee camps and retreats where I was surrounded by people who looked like me. People who understood that when the world tells you you're missing something, you start to feel as though you aren't enough. Being in these spaces helped me to realize that when I say that I am just differently abled, I'm cutting myself off from an entire community, a community that I'm proud to be a part of. And of course, every single person has their own relationship with this word, and claiming that identity means different things depending on who you are. Being disabled for me has meant getting used to stairs. Whether it's from little girls in the bathroom line or strangers on the train, it has meant learning and relearning again how to love myself and how to ask for what I need. But it has also meant being a part of a community that I wouldn't have otherwise initially known. It means walking into a room of 300 and automatically connecting with the other disabled people. And most importantly, this journey has taught me that it is not my job or the job of any other disabled person to explain their mind or body to you. Thank you.
Sorry about that. She says a lot of insightful things. Of course, she's speaking of her own experience, et cetera. And the thing that I've learned from many folks is, as many of us are aware, is that no one disabled person has the same experience as every other disabled person. And therefore, I wanted to start with her, but also acknowledge that there are many stories that we could hear. And I suggest that as often and as much as you can, just speaking and having human conversations with as many people across as many lines of difference, including disability, really do allow us as designers of educational spaces and places to build more maximally inclusive communities, and to think about access, to learn from and design with. And so with this in mind, I would like you to just take a second. What is one of the things this young woman, Asmani, says that resonated with you? What is it making you think that maybe you didn't think or believe or understand before? And how can you leverage that? I apologize, I'm just making sure that the slide, you can see that. So let me take this down really quickly and share it one more time. But as I'm doing this, what is something that Asmani said that made you think something that potentially you hadn't thought before or resonated with you? We're going to go into breakout rooms of a couple of people, and I want you just to think through that. Apologies, you all. Thank you for bracing with me here. All right. Here are a couple of quotes that I pulled from her speech, but you may have written down something else, et cetera. And again, if you are live streaming, go ahead and use this time to write and reflect on your own. And we will go into breakout rooms here in just a second. Anu, are you sending us into breakout rooms? Thank you.
Andrea, what we're discussing right now for everybody on the live stream, as well as this exact question, right? What did Asmani say that resonated with you? Or is it making you think that maybe you did not think, believe, or understand before hearing her speak?
Correct. And we'll have about 5 minutes here. So
I would urge the audience who's watching this live to also consider this question. We're going to play some music and to create that atmosphere. And
know you make me shiver. Yeah, you got me singing like, ooh, I love it when you do it like that. When you close up, give me the shivers. Oh, baby, you wanna dance till the sunlight cracks. When you say the party's over, then we'll bring it right back. Oh, no, say, ooh, I love it when you do it like that. When you close up, give me the shivers. Oh, baby, you wanna dance till the sunlight cracks. When you say the party's over, then we'll bring it back. The human mind, when things go wrong, when the sand is hurling us and temptation strong, cold, cold heart done by you. Something's looking better, baby, pass it through. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round again to find I'm not the man they think I am at all. Oh, no, no, no. And this is
We'll be closing out the breakout room now, and we'll be back in a minute.
where I thought I kept it. Cold, cold heart done by you. Things looking better, baby. Just pass it through. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round again to find I'm not the man they think I am at all. Oh, no, no, no. And this is what I should have said. Well, I thought I kept it. Cold, cold heart done by you.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for coming back and giving it over to Andrea again.
Welcome back, everyone. I would love to urge you, or I'd love to invite you to the chat, and I would love to hear what did you discuss in your breakout room, or if you're live streaming, what maybe circle or star, what's the thing that's standing out with you most? What resonated with you? Go ahead and take that to the chat and share it with the group. Thank you for kicking us off there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I invite you to read what other people are saying too, and I'll comment at the end. different emotions we attach to disability.
I can narrate some of this as we go along as well.
Thank you. I would love that.
Ojasvi talks about, we discussed how we have seen similar situations happen around us all the time. People do stare and ask questions that don't matter to them. Nisha talks about, a very valid question in my room was where to draw the line when we meet a disabled person the next time, and how to treat them without making them feel any lesser. Jitesh mentions the lack of infrastructural support and the other outlook people tend to have towards folks with disabilities. Nikita says, we discussed about how there are different emotions we attach to disability. Like we would feel differently if someone was born a certain way or was disabled because of an accident. So how the outlook and emotions differ with situations. Prince says that personally, it just made him question and reflect on his own perception around disability. And Shilpi says, differently abled is a social construct. The world is not universally for all. Nature is diverse and has room for all. In my quest to make specially able comfortable, I end up assuming and making them uncomfortable. And then Meghna says the need to include neurodivergent people in making decisions for them rather than asking neurotypical people to do it for them.
Thank you for doing that. And then lastly, Rachel says, understand the person in their need, ask if they need help, don't assume. Thank you for diving into those conversations. I got to pop into a couple of breakout rooms and really appreciate you allowing me to be there. And what I would say that is standing true in the conversations that I heard and in some of these chats is really this idea of two things are standing out. First is we build the world for average, and the world is designed for non-disabled people. And so that does a lot when you experience that world and you experience a world that is built towards the average or built towards supporting and helping folks thrive that don't have disabilities. Therefore, the experience that we have had informs the way that we act, the way that we design, et cetera. And so what's really resonating with me from all of these chats is just understanding how good intention can maybe make someone feel uncomfortable and therefore ask versus assume. How we design towards the average, therefore understanding that the world is not universally designed. And if we are going to design it for inclusive spaces, places, and experiences, then we need to actively dismantle some of the structures, thinking, and or systems we have that may make society, that definitely not may, will make society less inclusive of people with disabilities. And so thank you for sharing all of this. The one thing that I wanted to call out for this group in particular is this quote that we have bolded here. The world was designed for non-disabled people. I'm going to read it one more time. The world is designed for non-disabled people. Therefore, as designers of education spaces and places, there is a lot of power that we hold that we can share with community members, students, parents, et cetera, of people that identify as having a disability. If we are truly holding their experience at the center of our design, we can start from the inception of universal design and not do that towards the average or do that from assumptions, but do that with what people who are in the spaces and places we're designing tell us that they need, and hold high expectations for what they can achieve and do so that they are able to achieve choice-filled lives. They are able to have maximum opportunity, et cetera, just as though the world has designed for folks who are non-disabled. And so if we take one thing from this, I think my goal is that we take this and then we use that as designers of education spaces and places to dismantle things that get in the way or things that are leading towards that, and disrupt in terms of design so that we are designing spaces where people can and will thrive no matter what disability or non-disability they have in the same space. And we build the future community we want to see, one education space and place at a time. two fundamental ideas that I think really do help reframe in terms of what Asmani shares with us in terms of her feeling pity or people asking questions, etc., or assuming she needs help before she asks for it. Two things that I try to keep top of mind and two things that some of the programs I've worked with train all of their folks on. First, the Pygmalion effect. So the Pygmalion effect or the Rosenthal effect is a psychological phenomenon in which high expectations lead to performance in a given area. The effect is named for the Greek myth of Pygmalion, the sculptor who fell so much in love with a perfectly beautiful statue, he created the statue came to life. And so not as important on the second part, but really that first part there. When we believe that people can do really high, the highest level of thing, we match our support, we match our design to help them achieve that. And so the Pygmalion effect, there are lots of articles, it's in a lot of positive psychology books, a couple of YouTube videos to this end. I urge you to really take a look at that and hold that back of mind, because that matches, once we've made the choice, we know that we need to disrupt and design with. When we match our high expectations and support following the lead of a person with a disability and what they need in a moment to achieve whatever it is they're going after, the outcomes will be 10 times what they would be if we hadn't come from the place of assets, from the place of what can be and what people want and need. A couple of that, oftentimes, if we start with the Pygmalion effect, oftentimes because of the experience that many of us grew up in, educators or people may say, well, people call me Bond, which is my last name. Well, Bond, what about people with the most significant intellectual disabilities? Like, I understand a person with a learning disability. What about a person with an intellectual disability? Does this include them too? And my answer is an unequivocal yes. What they may want and the support they may need may look different, but we should assume that they can achieve really important and rigorous things, and we should follow their lead for what those things are. This group of students and young adults, in my experience, have been the most imposed upon group of young people that I've met. We decide what we want for them based on teacher excitement about activities. So when we think of something as simple as leisure, giving folks the opportunity to understand what do I like to do versus what my teacher has designed for me to do. And then helping them be successful in that. The idea or concept I would ground that really helps keep my mindset really strong and committed to this end is something called the least dangerous assumption. And the idea of the least dangerous assumption is assume that people are competent and able to learn. So assume that a student can do it, match the supports to support them or to help them achieve it, and continue to presume that they have confidence and give them the rigorous learning opportunity. If we presume they can't do it, then we never afford this group of young people the experiences that will stretch their leisure, stretch their opportunity, and allow them to achieve what they can and what they want. And so, two things to really hold in our minds. First, the Pygmalion effect. When we hold high expectations, all people do better, including people with disabilities. And when we think about people with the most significant disabilities, thinking about the least dangerous assumption. When we believe that students with significant disabilities can learn and are competent and are able to do rigorous things, then we allow them truly the opportunities that will afford them the learning and stretch their growth. So those are the two things that I think really actively, if you hold in your brain once you've made the choice, allow you to design with alongside and to maximum opportunity as you build, as you design and build your learning spaces and places for students with disabilities. So I'm going to invite you back to the chat. And if you are live streaming, I'm going to invite you back to wherever it is you're taking notes, jotting, journaling, and ask you this question. How do these fundamental ideas shape the way we might think about designing inclusive communities for kids and young adults with disabilities? So how might these shape the way you will think about as you move forward? I'm inviting you to the chat in case I did not give that direction. So first, we can ask them, first response, thank you. We can ask them how they would like their spaces to be designed, see what works for them rather than what we think is appropriate for them. Second, students live up to our expectations, both said and unsaid. So beyond setting high expectations, thinking about what these expectations can look like in school design, infrastructure, curriculum, teacher input to raise unsaid expectations along with the explicitly said ones. High expectations are key. Once we've established that between students and teachers, moving from there to make it happen is a different ballgame. Absent of pity, absent of misplaced savior complex. To fall in love with their idea of being, it may bring it to life. More inclusive infrastructure for students, a comprehensive plan to help them achieve difficult goals. For teenagers and adults, cooperate with them to come up with design changes that accommodate their needs better and extrapolate from there, I'm sorry, y'all, that was an early moment for me, and extrapolate there for others. Teacher-student connection is most instrumental in successful learning to take place. An educator who uses these tools would create a positive climate in the classroom for every learner. I see the leaps, unlimited opportunities, and high expectations in addition to rigorous learning, self-direction, and action. These tools offer a universal design. Thank you for sharing those thoughts. Absolutely. Biggest thing is that I would stamp is just by meeting high expectations and then matching it with universal design. When we partner alongside our learners, amazing learning spaces can be created that start with inclusive and rigorous activities and also lead to choice-filled lives. In this slide, what you'll see is a shot of a young man who goes to the Arc of San Francisco. This is another video. We're not going to watch it, but I'm happy to share it after. And the Arc of San Francisco partnered with Airbnb. This was about 2016 when this video took place. And so basically what they say about this young man's experience and many young people like him who are working in the community is that is just simply this. They're just people who just need a chance with a little extra support. Society and as a whole holds them back. They're ready to go. And so as you start the learning journey and you think about universal design and you think about partnering with, the question that I learned and keep in mind all the time from this, that aligns to this video in particular, is just what about this design, what about this space may be unintentionally holding people back, that if shifted could in a slight way could unleash opportunity for more people to have an inclusive experience in this space. This next slide, we're going to watch a video of two former teachers, well, I believe, current teachers who started a coffee shop called Able Coffee Roasters in California. I want you to hear from these two designers on how they built this business specifically to employ people with disabilities, and as an employer, how they use accommodations to ensure independence and success. Think about this from their experience, but also my goal is that you can extrapolate this and be able to plug it into whatever space or place you are thinking about and designing for.
There's various disabilities that exist. There's, autism, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, bipolar disorder, just a wide variety. And, we're open to working and employing anybody. And at the same time, it doesn't always have to be those with disabilities, because we're still a coffee shop. We're still, we have a storefront, we create a product. So we have, typical and neurotypical individuals that we're willing to employ. My name is Adil Asif, and I am one of the co-founders at Able Coffee Roasters. I have my background in psychology and behavior analysis. We understand that it's hard for employers to employ people with disabilities because they may not know how to work with them or have the experience of how to accommodate for them so that they are successful in the work setting. As educators first, and now employers, we're able to kind of create that environment and teach our staff so that they're trained and they're able to train other individuals with disabilities so that they're successful.
My name's Anthony Palmieri. I am the co-owner and founder of Able, and I'm also a current high school special ed teacher. I teach an autism-specific class for the Irvine Unified School District, and I've been teaching for close to 10 years. I've been in the field for over 15 years, and that's actually where Adil and I met. We met in my classroom. That's how we became friends first, and then also business partners second. We found the passion in the classroom. That's where it started, and we both love coffee. What kind of was the motivation behind all this was the lack of vocational job opportunities for our students after they would leave us. And so after high school, there's not a lot of opportunities. There's for college, they take elective courses or they go to an adult transition program, which is from 18 to 22. If you don't get a diploma, that's how it works. We just saw the need, and we heard it from the parents, from the previous students. They're like, please, we need help. We need, my son or daughter's just sitting at home. Chase, for instance, Chase has just turned 32 and we celebrated his birthday here. But this was Chase's first job. It's his first job ever. Before that, he was in home all the time. And there's so many benefits to having a job. It's not only making money, right? And it's the social component, being a part of the community, feel like you're contributing as an individual. The biggest motivator for Adil and I was to address that unemployment issue. Individuals with disabilities who previously had jobs and then they got unemployed due to COVID or whatnot, it's 83% unemployment rate for that population. That's a huge, huge need, a huge deficit in our population. So that's not okay for us to have that statistic. We know that our students, they are able to do so much more. Just giving the basic accommodations, I think, like just the visual supports for those that can't read. They have symbol supported text. It's the text with a picture of the word, right? So just that basic one, then they're able to understand. It's an accommodation. There's so many different techniques and accommodations we use in the shop itself that really, it's awesome how independent our workers are. A lot of times when Adil and I are interviewing potential employees, we ask, like, what are your skill sets? Do you like working like potentially front of house, which a lot of times they don't know what that means. So we'll have to explain. Do you want to interact with customers? Are you social? Or do you want to work in the back where we do more like repetitious tasks like packaging coffee or making food to orders? Like or stamping cups. There's a lot of different things we do. Giving people a chance to work here. And if that means that they find out that they don't like working here, but it gives them the confidence to go apply somewhere else if they want to, heck yeah, and use this as a reference, yeah, of course. Like that's the whole goal. It's just to create the skills here. There's so many skills that they learn that are so valuable, man. Like a lot of them don't have diplomas, that's okay, but like using a 3-compartment sink, being a dishwasher or a cook or a barista or working a cash register. They could get a job anywhere, getting minimum wage with that. And it's really cool because we know how to break down each of those tasks, either with different modes of teaching, whether it's a video model with like, we'll video how to do the task, or we'll take pictures and do like, break it down, like task analysis for it.
That's our whole goal, is to create independence and to create inclusion where the prompts that I talked about before can be faded, because that's how you teach it. You teach it with the most intrusive prompt, whatever it is. Sometimes it's hand over hand, or sometimes it's a visual prompt. But the goal is to fade out those prompts to create independence.
We believe everybody's great the way they were born. It's just, if you want to come and have an employer that provides accommodations and will be patient and let you be as independent as possible in a work setting, that come here. Like that's what our whole goal is. Yeah.
All right. So I think of these two gentlemen who started this coffee shop as 21st century designers, right? They are disrupting the space of employment in their community because they noticed that space wasn't universally designed. It wasn't accessible for all people. And therefore you have students who are 32 who have left their schooling, who have left school and are above schooling age, whose peers have jobs and they don't have access to that. Therefore, they are imagining the world they want to see and using the tools that they have. So you hear them talk about task analysis, so breaking down a task into bite-sized pieces and teaching those explicitly based on where a student is and in conversation with that student. This would be an employee, excuse my language there. Providing universal accommodations where needed in terms of picture charts, picture cues, video models of how to make certain toasts or certain beverages, etc. A lot of things that these two designers are doing, I'm curious when you think about how they are thinking about the design, what might stand out to you? So when you think about the designers themselves and how they're approaching the work, what is standing out to you? And I invite you to come to the chat with that. Lemon Tree Hotels. Thank you for sharing that.
Andrea, do you think that we could maybe bring someone online and like hear from them as well?
I would love that. Yeah,
Awesome.
please, yeah, feel free to unmute and share.
Shilpi, we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you for that. I feel that, they genuinely believe that, especially able people ought to be independent and it's not just, the financial independence, but the whole idea about, being able to contribute as a human being, because, all of us, we have a purpose in life, and there's a reason that we've been planted in this big world. And it's very important, that they get a fair chance to serve that purpose, and to contribute to this big world, and which is a very healthy intention. Hats off to their spirit for sure. Of course, unlimited opportunities, what they believe in, and they're not assuming that they can't do it. So I see the least dangerous assumption, and the Pygmalion effect. They are using those tools, when they're creating this space for them to come and operate, and get that fair share of being a human here on this earth.
Thank you for that, Shilpi. Nikita raised. Would love to hear from you.
I just love this idea that they have, and I like how they're not looking at them as just employees or a place where they can retain them, but they are looking at their cafe as a sort of bridging place where these people can, learn the skills and move on. So they are equipping them to build skills also, along with, gaining confidence and things like that. I think that is like a really amazing job that they are doing.
Absolutely. Sakshi, let's hear from you.
Hi, Andrea. I really love the way they are identifying the passion among the children and connecting it to dignified livelihood. So this is the best thing that I really like in whole school process. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you, Sakshi. Kush, let's hear from you and close this out.
Thanks, Arshia. Hi, Andrea. It's really insightful, the type of examples that you're giving and the type of things that are happening back in US. I just want to ask you on a policy level, like say if someone who is not specially abled, like you can't, for example, someone who is a bipolar or a manic or an ADHD, and if diagnosed, has mentioned about him or her being diagnosed to the employers. So are there any policies where, or are there any interventions from the employer side that are happening that you are aware of in the US or any other parts of the country? Or are there any, sort of other ways that the employers help or do not help the employees with these kind of issues? Can you just tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I know the most about the US, so I can't speak as much to other countries, but the primary policy that protects the rights of people with disabilities in employment spaces, but also in schools, is ADA. Schools also have the Individuals with Disabilities Act, IDEA, but the Americans with Disabilities Act is more universal. And so under that umbrella policy, if you will, one thing that folks can do is request accommodations at work given their disability. And that can be anything from a physical disability to ADHD, et cetera. And those policies look a little bit different based upon the nature of the disability, the intensity, et cetera. So no one experience is the same in its ideal form. However, that is the protection that exists, and there is a process through human relations at an organization that would set that up if a person chooses to disclose. It is also under policy that if you are employed, you do not have to disclose, which is different in schools. The way that that plays out in schools, often when many times, there are very few times that you don't know if a child has a disability because you are providing services, etc. In an employment place, you can choose to disclose or not disclose disability and choose to ask for accommodations based on that. And so does that answer your question? Anything else that makes you wonder?
No, I mean, that pretty much answers my question, but in your experience, have you ever had someone who is a teacher who had ADHD, bipolar, and he or she is handling, say, a kindergarten class or something, and these kind of experiences from the teacher point of view? Because most of the times people are talking about exclusive classrooms, exclusive schools, and majority the students are at the center, like in at least my experiences it has been. So are teachers also accommodated, or say the admin staff of the organization also accommodated into these things, or like how does it work like?
Yeah, I think it's hard to answer that in super concretely, because again, the experience is different, but there are definitely teachers with disabilities. What I will say in terms of ensuring that students see people that have similar identities with them, including the disability, an identity of having a disability, there are not enough of them. And so that is something we need to get better at in the United States across many lines of difference, including disability. And for the teachers that do have disabilities, they are able to apply for, they are able to access accommodations. Sort of, I think the term that most people would use is like within reason under the American with Disabilities Act within their organization. And so that, again, will just look different depending upon the person, the circumstances, et cetera. So I can't speak to what that looks like in every scenario. I see.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. I see another hand. Go ahead.
Thank you. I was just wondering, because here in this part of the world, I wouldn't say that, there are a lot of policies being designed, and even if, I'm not aware, even if they're being designed, they're not being implemented. So do you think as an organization or an institution, like say, I had a school, so can we look at, designing policies within our own system with respect to employing people, and also you see in the context of students? Do you think that's a possibility? I mean, and what would we need to empower ourselves to, to be a space like that?
Yeah, I think what you're implying, or how I'm interpreting it, and tell me if I'm off here, is as you design a school or a learning space, can you write your own policies that hold people accountable to ensuring that supports and designing with happen for students with disabilities, or basically non-discriminatory actions, kind of, if I were to say it in a different way. Those are things that exist across the school system in the United States and are locally and nationally. It is local and national accountability to that end. And what I have found to be true is that those things are helpful in ensuring a baseline version of access for all students. And not only, and I'm not only speaking of like bad actors, people who know better and don't do better, but just in the day-to-day, ensuring that this stays top of mind for priority. And because there is sort of the accountability and ensuring bottom line access, rights, and accessibility. And that is a policy level solution in my mind. And then there is a designing for the 21st century world we want to see, and going above and beyond that. And so my personal view is that both are necessary. We need to ensure equity by having a vision and designing for the world we want to see. That is true. And in our hardest moments, maybe sometimes that doesn't happen in the way we most intend, and therefore we need to also ensure and hold accountable what must always be true as we strive towards this vision. So I don't know the ins and outs of your school or your community and what you're able to write into policy, but I do find that to be effective, because both in my experience have been necessary to keep us true on our path towards designing inclusive communities.
Thank you, everybody, for engaging.
So thank you so much for the questions and coming off mute. What I would like to do is send us into breakout rooms. And again, if you are on live stream, invite you, to join us, excuse me, I'm gonna get my words together here. I invite you to reflect in a journal, etc. What I would love for you to think about is, once you make the choice and you're thinking about designing with purpose, what is it that you want to hold true in your specific space when you and believe and train your team to know what is possible? So for instance, what do you want to be true about your space, and how do you want to hold this idea of what's possible and design the 21st century experience that all learners deserve and can thrive in your unique space or place? We're going to go to breakout rooms, and we'll have 5 minutes here with some other colleagues to discuss what's top of mind for you.
Yeah. Why you calling at 11:30 when you only wanna do me dirty? But I hit right back 'cause you got that, yeah. Why you always wanna act like lovers, but you never wanna be each other's? I say don't look back, but I go right back there.
We're all coming back in about 20 seconds.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you got some time to process your thinking and also hear and get inspiration from a colleague who might be coming from a different context or point of view. Thank you for sharing this. I'm just going to read what was shared in the chat here. It's making a lot of sense. It's a choice. As an educator, I was thinking about quality of education and equity, but life still remains as a challenge beyond that. These two excellent teachers turned entrepreneurs are torchbearers for me. They made a choice to intervene beyond education or school. And so thank you for sharing that. And that maybe you shared earlier just came in for me. Feels like the just-in-time message. I'd love to invite a couple of other folks just to share what they come off mute and share. What did you talk about? What's coming top of mind for you as you make the choice and design for what's possible?
I think as they gather their thoughts, Andrea, we can maybe.
Absolutely.
Rachel, would you like to share with everybody off mute?
So I think the choices that you make, the intentions that lead to your intention, and once you have that particular intention towards creating something, that is going to be your driving force. And there would be days when you may be down or you may not be able to be up to your mark, but your intention, your purpose will keep you driving, and that's what is going to help you to move further. So I think that's very important.
Thank you. We can hear from Jitesh before moving on with Andrea.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think if the spaces are designed carefully, I think it would definitely give individuals and groups an opportunity to cooperate in a much more productive manner. which is one of the goals that we have as human beings, to empathize with each other and to understand the difficulties we face. And I think a fascinating idea came into my mind while discussing that it's a very likely possibility that we might be missing out on significantly cool innovations and ideas that are just being left behind because we are not giving these individuals the right platform to move forward from. So I think that will be really interesting. And I'm sure that you can share something along those lines from your experience as well, that where somebody who has been disabled came up with something which was significantly different from what we normally think about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The experience that, to answer your question, thank you for sharing, first of all, that totally resonates. And I really appreciate that. And to be honest, the experience that's coming top of mind is actually not this idea of something totally different that hasn't been experienced. And I will share an example, but also just a very human experience that one of our students with disabilities, who was an 11th grader, went to a school. He used a motorized wheelchair, and in front of his school were the worst sidewalks you'd ever seen in the city of New Orleans. And so if you are if to get places, you are leveraging, or you're using a motorized wheelchair, broken sidewalks with jagged edges, we're talking to 6 inches, 6 off the ground, don't make it so that you can independently access school. And so what this young man did was actually write to City Hall and talk to local politicians and write an article to advocate for how sidewalks need to be in his community so that everyone can access school and access the community independently. And so I think that did help us understand, this is where it's going to get into your question. But first, I think the most important thing is like having your own power is important, to use your voice to change the things that are impacting your life. And oftentimes times in schools, people with disabilities, especially people with we might deem as having the most significant disabilities, where this young man would find himself in that category potentially, don't have the opportunity to do that in the same way I do, or potentially other able-bodied or perceived able-minded humans might be able to, or members of the community might be able to do. And so just that access point of being able to advocate and knowing how to do that and being able to do that independently was step one. And what that led us to do, which currently I no longer work for the organization, but what the organization is still spearheading, is a local advocacy community where students with disabilities sit on the community alongside leaders in disability programming, policy, and I guess really just programming and policies. Students with disabilities, as well as educators, policymakers, and program leaders come together on a monthly clip and talk about what are the opportunities that we have as a system, the system being the city of New Orleans, and what are the problems we can solve together, and what does that mean that when we put our united effort together, we can do by following the leadership of our young adults with disabilities. So the last time I have the honor of joining those groups as frequently as I can. And the last time I was there, they were talking about the absence of accessible leisure activities in community centers. So this young man talked about sidewalks, which the sidewalk is now fixed. And that was mostly because of his advocacy. And this group is now talking about leisure activities run by local community centers funded by the city of New Orleans, and how they don't have ramps to the activities, or they're not publicized, or maybe there's not specific communities for people with disabilities in the way that they're requesting in terms and how the community might be able to do that. And so now you have policy leaders sitting next to program leaders, sitting next to educators, sitting next to just larger community, making sure that we're following the lead and designing alongside to increase access and inclusivity. And so that's the story that comes top of mind. I'm sure if I dig, there are more of those, but that one has really stuck with me. When we follow the lead of people with disabilities, the way that we design is different, and what we might design towards in terms of like the ultimate goals might be a little bit different, and the opportunities are better for all of us.
Yeah.
Thank you for prompting that question.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
So I want to leave you with just a couple of tools as you go in and design alongside people with disabilities, more inclusive education spaces and places and opportunities. Just two tools that I have leveraged a lot. First is, and you may have already seen it in this space, is the Transcend Talking with Kids guide. There are a lot of questions in here that can work as you design alongside students with disabilities and young adults with disabilities and inform what you are designing to and for. And I think ultimately this concept that comes out of nothing about us without us. So these are fueled by people with disability. We should be following their lead, following their conviction. They know what's best for them. I will put an article in the chat here in just a second that describes this movement that has and really does inform how you both design with and design nothing about us without us, and leverage the voices of and specifically seek them out to design inclusive spaces and inclusive programming for students with disabilities. So we'll go ahead and throw that in the chat there in just a second. And then finally, I just want to leave you with this, right? Once you make the choice, design inclusively and plan for all young people to have access to choice-filled lives. We do the best we can until we know better. And once we know better, we do better. And so by making the choice and by thinking through all of these design concepts, whether that be from a policy perspective or from a design perspective, or how you want to approach your work as a designer and leader in your space, you've made that choice. And I hope to hear the wonderful things you do and learn alongside you as we continue to make a more inclusive educational community for all people in all parts of the world that identify as having a disability. Thank you for having me today, and I am happy to stay on for a couple of questions, but I really appreciate you all joining and appreciate hearing from you.
Thank you so much for that, Andrea, and so much for just sparking all of these thoughts and giving us anchoring ideas and principles to base off of to think about inclusive spaces. We hope to actually bring you on soon to also share with us more and more tools and strategies to implement some of these thoughts, principles as well, so that we can produce more able coffee roasters. Some great thoughts coming in from around and across our participants. Thank you so much, Jitesh, Shilpi, Dilip, Rushali, and so many other people from the chat as well as live for engaging with us. I think this Maya Angelou quote about do the best you can until you know better, then when you know better, do better, I think really sums up the thoughts that you shared with us today. Thank you so much, Andrea. With that, we bring to a close our lab forum on building inclusive communities in school with Andrea. So I hope that you enjoyed that as well. And we also just wanted to bring to your attention that this actually brings to a close our October set of lab forums. Next, we meet you in November for a very, very interesting lab forum involving Transcend, actually, which Andrea talked about, and how they use trend cards to talk about what's really going on in schools. We will be talking about sparking conversation about the implications of contemporary trends for today's schools. We'll be covering 4 categories: science, technology, and information, economy and employment, demographics, identity, and power, and the health of our planet and people. So if you're interested in that, join us. We'll be sharing more details soon. Once again, thanks, Andrea. We hope to host another forum with you and more. Thank you, everybody, for joining in.